Everyone knew that it could happen eventually. But when it actually happened, people reacted in very strange ways. We had been watching YouTube videos for 20 years nearly, and we thought we had it all hammered out. As soon as the power grid went down, day 1 we would do this, day 5 we would do that. But we didn't really know what would happen beyond day 14. But we had plenty of supplies, lots of canned goods, ways to clean water so that we could bathe and we could drink. And we could live life, at least in some approximate way that we used to live it before. But something very odd started to happen. We started to see people go house to house and knock on doors. Some were hungry, some were thirsty, but some were just interested in the latest gossip. They hadn't talked to anyone for such a long time that they had this need to know everyone else's business and what was going on. And that's now looking back, when it really all fell apart again. The power grid was bad enough, but when we lost faith in one another, that was the real collapse. This channel has talked about what people are going to have to do besides beans, bolts, and band-aids. There's something that I'm starting to see now that is truly frightening. How interested people are in the behavior of others and what goes on behind their closed doors, because they feel they have a moral duty to not let things come back the way they used to be. Believe it or not, there are people out there right now that are looking forward to the day when the power grid goes down and the great equalization occurs so that they can rebuild in their image, the way they think God would want us to live, and not allow any immorality to seep in, defined by them. You see, back in the good old days, this era, the medieval European era, when people thought that, oh, gosh, days were just nothing but hard work. You didn't really have time to worry about doing immoral things. You just served God and ate beans and listened to people play the flute. And that's the world we need to get back to, and reading our Bibles all the time. Funny story, though. The Bible that we read today didn't exist through a great many years of the Middle Ages. King James was 1600. You have to wonder, what were they reading in 1200, 1300, 1400? And if the Middle Ages were so moral, how did we end up where we are? See, there's going to be these little bands of survival groups that get together, and they're going to become the morality police. Because just surviving isn't going to be good enough. If we allow immorality to seep in and even live down the road, eventually it's going to come for us. One of our group is going to have a weak moment, and they're going to do something they shouldn't do. And then we'll be right back where we started from. We can't allow that. We have to nip it in the bud. Some people will take the idea of castles to a completely ridiculous level, where only certain levels of morality are allowed beyond certain walls. Themselves, of course, being the most moral, because of what their particular preacher told them moral was. Look up the definition, simply, of the word fornication. And what you'll notice is that going back through history, all the way back to the 4th century, Greece, they had a definition for it. You know what it was? Women used to stand under these vaulted ceilings, women, prostitutes, that were referred to as, let's see if I have it here, fornix, Fornix. and it became a euphemism for brothels. So in this era, the 4th century, fornication meant frequenting a brothel. Well, that's very different than what a lot of Americans think it is. During the Roman Empire, they had a different definition. Great Britain, Europe, just from 1170 to the Marriage Act of 1753, the definitions changed wildly. Islamic nations, strangely enough today, have what a lot of modern high-minded Christian women believe is the exact right definition: any form of sexual activity outside marriage. Isn't it really odd that we hear a lot of conservative women in North America, and some men, quote Islamic law as the direction we should be going? You see, this is the idea that I want you to ask yourself. Even when they were living in a time when the vast majority of their day was spent doing things to keep themselves alive, they still had time to sit around and write down what other people should and other people should not be doing. You see, in a grid down, power down survival situation, I'd like you to ask yourself a question. How much of your day are you going to spend sitting around divining ways of policing the behavior of your neighbors? You're not, are you? Of course you're not. I'm sure a lot of people are, look, I'm going to mind my own business, Mucky. I don't care what they do over there. That's the way it's going to be. Well, guess what? History shows something very different. History shows that when people are put into situations like this, without rule of law, left to their own, end of the world as we know it, whatever euphemism you want to use, eventually, once they've got the basics taken care of, the first thing they try to do is police the behavior of others. Point fingers as to how did we get here? The reason everything all fell apart was because we had immoral leaders and they didn't do this and this and this. So we're going to have to drop the hammer and be a lot more strict and start getting involved in things. First thing we're going to do, we're going to go start knocking on doors and making sure anybody who's living together, cohabitating under a roof together, that they got some type of a marriage license. Because if they don't, that's the slippery slope. Right down to hell. And if they won't produce one, well, guess what? We're not going to trade with them. We're not going to employ them. We're not going to allow them to be part of the community. Because they're fornicators. Oh, we'll pray for them. But we're going to turn the screws. Oh, and we're also going to say, you know what? That girl over there, she looks a little bit too young to be shacking up with that boy. We're going to need somebody to provide a birth certificate, or we're going to drag them out in the middle of the night. And we're going to prevent that horrific thing from happening, just to be safe, if they can't produce a birth certificate. You see, that's what survival groups are really going to do. That's what they're going to spend their day doing. It ain't going to be surviving. It ain't going to be holed up down in the bunkers. It ain't going to be patrolling their property. No. They're going to be out looking for trouble. Because that's what they do now. Is what I just described rational or emotional? Clearly, it's solid emotion. You can have guys on walls with big signs that say, fornicators, turn around. If you're in a relationship together and you aren't legally married, we don't want you to be part of our group, and we've got a big truck-mounted gun to make sure you stay away. We got a whole list of laws here, a whole giant list of morality that we're going to have you read. And you're going to obey every one of our moral laws if you want to stay here. If not, turn back. This is what's going to happen. How do we know that to be a fact? How do we know that to be a fact? Because that's exactly what did happen. Where do you think all of the definitions of all of the moral laws came from that you read in the Bible? People had time, even during survival situations, to sit around and pontificate about what people should and should not do. And they had people charged with enforcing it. And that's what I'm hearing right now from my audience. It's not about two people sitting around and making a decision for what they think is best for their lives. No. You see, they're going to want that for themselves, of course. But when they decide on what they think morality is, they're going to be those that want to export that because it works for them. They're going to get involved and say, hey, wait a minute, wasn't she married to Mike, and wasn't he married to Brenda? And we know that they were married, and we know it's grid down, power down, and there's no civil courts. They couldn't possibly have a legal divorce, so there's no way these two should be able to have any time together or enjoy each other's presence or be blessed by each other. Nope, sorry, that's immoral. You two need to stay away from each other, or we're going to keep you away from each other. That's what's going to happen. Linda down the street, she never cared for Corey. But boy, she's down there 3 or 4 times a week now. And when she comes out, her hair's all a mess and her shirt's untucked. They never used to like each other. I wonder what's going on down there. We need to put a stop to that. And we definitely can't have this. He's way too old. Yeah, technically there's nothing wrong with it, but we just don't think it's a good idea. And since we're moral in every other aspect of our lives, this must be moral too. So we're going to get involved and stop that. We can't have anything going on anywhere within our sphere that we think is inappropriate. And we will kick indoors, and we will ostracize people, and we will make sure they get the message that none of their shenanigans are going to be allowed anymore. We'll let them die. We'll just let them die. We'll make sure they have no food. That'll teach them. They need fresh water? Sorry. They're going to have to come through us. We're definitely not going to allow any more of this baubly earrings and makeup and sleevelessness to go on with people that sing gospel music. You see how ridiculous I sound? Well, guess what? That's what's coming. For those of you who don't know, this is Sonia Isaacs, one of the most blessed, most amazing singers, songwriter, performers, entertainers on the planet. You see, if you want to look for reasons to condemn people and point fingers, you'll be able to find them. Paul wrote in the Bible, the fruit of the Spirit is love and joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. How often do we measure our Christian ideals and beliefs by these criteria first? We don't. I'll ask the question again. Who do you have tasked in your survival group with being your morality police? If you don't have somebody tasked with that job, clearly you don't care about morality then, do you? Anything goes. Because you don't have anybody tasked with stopping it. You just believe everybody's just going to automatically act moral in your group? See, it's a question people don't ask themselves. They love inventorying the beans and the bullets and the Band-Aids and going to the range and plopping tin cans off hay bales and doing all this kind of stuff. But when it comes to what's really going to matter, they don't want to talk about it because it's uncomfortable. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Are you ready? I'll leave it there. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.